Good afternoon, everybody. I will call the Technology Committee meeting to order. Our chair, I believe, is online, but cannot chair the meeting today because of legal reasons, I guess. So is Councilman Buscaino online? He's only hearing. Okay, he cannot speak with us. All right. So we'll go ahead with the agenda here this morning. The first item is recognize and transfer funds and execute and amend agreements for installation and maintenance of air filtration systems, reimburse the general fund for administrative costs, and purchase electric school buses. Quite a lot pulled into this agenda item. And we'll have a report from Patricia Kwan. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, yes.
Thank you. So as background information, EPA is executing SEPs totaling $575,000 with Schneider National and Old Dominion Freight Line to install air filtration systems in schools, and are again requesting AQMD act as a SEP implementer. In addition, there's an LADWP hearing board variance that was received into Fund 69 for mitigation fees from 3 generating stations. LADWP did submit an environmental mitigation plan providing $1.5 million for school air filtration and electric school buses. In addition, there's a prior LADWP settlement in Fund 38 for $397,000 for school air filtration. The proposal is to execute MOAs as a SEP implementer in the disproportionately impacted areas identified in the SEPs. This would be for air filtration at LAUSD and Long Beach Unified Schools near the ports. This would include installing air filtration systems, working with the school districts to prioritize schools, and providing replacement filters for schools with air filtration. In addition, LAUSD would commit to purchasing 3 electric school buses for the Sun Valley Bus Depot. We would execute or amend agreements with IQAir as our air filtration contractor. They've been previously identified through 2 prior RFP processes. We've done 76 schools and community centers today. And it would be using the same air filtration technologies that have previously been tested, the high performance panel filters, and then standalone units for schools without central HVAC. So our schedule would be to go to the board in September. We anticipate executing contracts shortly thereafter and going through a school selection and site assessment process. And then the project implementation would take place in a little bit, kind of over a year and a quarter. And then all these activities would be wrapped up no later than December 2019. But it's also quite possible that we could wrap up these activities much earlier. So the recommended actions would be to recognize the SEP funds from Schneider National and Old Dominion Freight Line into Air Filtration Fund 75 and execute the MOAs. We would transfer some money from the Clean Fuels Program as a temporary loan pending the receipt of SEP revenue and reimburse the general fund for administrative staff time. We would execute or amend agreements with local school districts for the air filtration programs. We would execute contracts with IQAir North America for installation of air filtration systems. And it's from the 3 following sources, $546,250 from Air Filtration Fund 75, about $1.1 million from the LADWP Variant Special Revenue Fund 69, and then about $400,000 from Fund 38, a prior settlement. We would also amend contracts with IQAir as needed to purchase additional filters if there are any unspent administrative funds from staff time. And we would execute an agreement with LAUSD for the purchase of the 3 electric school buses, including the installation of charging infrastructure from Fund 69. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Patricia. I want to mention before we go any further that while I don't have a financial interest in this item or in item number 2 on our agenda, I'm a member of the California Air Resources Board, and they are involved in both of those items 1 and 2 on our agenda. So we'll go next and ask, are there any questions on this item? Supervisor?
Yes, thanks. I'm wondering how often the filters have to be changed and how much the replacement costs.
The filters typically need to be changed about once a year. It depends on the usage in the particular classroom. There are filter life sensors that monitor the pressure drop to ensure that the filter is only changed as necessary. The replacement cost, it depends on how often they're changed. The filters cost about $100 per filter. So it depends on the number of classrooms, the number of buildings, and the frequency of replacement.
And how did we pick which schools we're starting with? How did we get to the Rialto first?
So it really pertains to the settlement terms and the SAP. For instance, for the Old Dominion Freight Line, both EPA and legal counsel representing the violator have specified that Rialto needs to be the first target area, but they were also willing to consider Colton or San Bernardino if for some reason Rialto did not agree to move forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, are there any comments, public comment on this item? Nope, seeing
Move
none.
the item?
Thank you.
I'll second.
And a motion from Supervisor Solis, second from Councilmember Dwight Robinson. And maybe have a recall.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford,
Aye.
Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Motion passes 4 ayes.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is recognized revenue from CARB for the Carl Moyer program and the EFMP, and appropriate funds, amend contract for implementing assistance, and reimburse the general fund for administrative and outreach costs for EFMP. And Mei Wang will give us her report on this.
Thank you, Chair. This item, the background is ARB had allocated $2.6 million to AQMD for the voluntary NOx remediation measures funding programs. The NRM was established to remediate the increase of NOx emissions from the biodiesel use in California. The project to be funded must comply with commonly approved guideline, except the lower cost effectiveness limit for the NOx reduction is $10,000 per ton of NOx reductions. Fiscal year 17-18, ARB had allocated $16.4 million to AQMD for the EFMP program. EFMP, we branded as Replace Your Ride program, is a voluntary light-duty vehicle replace and retire and replacement program. It's available for the lower-income motorists. So the EFMP includes class up incentive funds for the participants who reside in the disadvantaged communities. We had replaced over 3,000 older vehicles with newer, more fuel-efficient vehicles, and 94% of them were in disadvantaged communities. So we would like to recognize $2.6 million in the SCAQMD with ARB to implement the NRM programs. We will be selecting projects from this year's Moyer solicitation, which opened in March and closed in June. Staff is currently evaluating the application right now, and we are planning our recommendation for board consideration in October-November timeframe. Also, we want to recognize $16.4 million from ARB, which for the EFMP program, which consists of $1.4 million from the EFMP base and $15 million from the class of incentive, which is from low carbon transportation and BW settlement funds. And Request Your Right is implemented by AQMD with a consultant's case management support and remote sensing tests to the vehicles. So staff recommends amending a contract with OPUS inspections to add funds to continue their case management support and the remote sensing testing service for the EFMP. Okay.
Go back.
Recommended action includes recognize $2.6 million from ARB for the NRM program and authorize our executive officer to execute an MOA with ARB for program implementations. And recognize $16.4 million from ARB and authorize our executive officer to accept the terms and conditions of EFMP, grant award, and approve vouchers and the other alternative mobility options for EFMP until all funds are exhausted. Also to amend a contract with Opus Inspection to continue the case management support and remote sensing activity in support of the EFMP program for an amount not to exceed $550,000 from the admin portion of Fund 56. And I would like to mention that in the agenda email shows $500,000 in the synopsis, which we will did a edit or do the edit to $550,000 to match the recommended actions. Also, we would like to recommend reimburse the general funds for up to $2.4 million from the Fund 56 for the administrative and outreach costs to implement EFMP, and transfer an appropriate $65,500 from Fund 56 to STA's budget year 18-19 and 19-20. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on this item?
Yeah, I want to try to understand the requirements for scrapping. So, and I assume that since CARB's directing the funds that it's coming from CARB, but do we have any data on what the average age of the vehicle? I assume they all have to be in running condition. Is that
For EFMP?
Yeah.
Yes, so the EFMP stands for Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program, which just rolls off your tongue naturally. So that's why we call it Replace Your Ride. But that program is intended to get emissions benefits from vehicles that still have some lifetime left, and that's why they smog test them. It's not the cash for clunkers, as it were, where they're not operable. So that's why we have to do the smog test. In terms of the vehicle life or the model years that are being turned in, we can get that information, and that's all stuff that they have to turn in when they apply for the program.
okay?
They have to be registered, that person, for a year, but I don't know how many years in
Has
California.
to own for a year. They don't have to register for a year.
But the title has to be in their
The
name
title has
for
to be on.
at least the previous year.
Just in general, I mean, I've explained before, but I'm not a really big fan of scrapping on the big rig trucks. I mean, there's some significant value in those trucks.
We agree.
We don't want them in the district clearly, especially once we've distributed some funds to get some new ones there.
Mhm.
But, there's some secondary markets for sure
Right.
that where they can be useful. The same could potentially be true with, passenger vehicles. I know cost of transportation, taking them to, countries or locales where, that starts to become an issue because they don't have the same value for sure as a big rig truck would. But, I just think I'd like to explore it a little bit more and find out, exactly what's behind that, and maybe, if it makes sense, try to educate those that are making these decisions on what some additional opportunities might be to. I know she's one of them for sure. Yeah, and
We can get that information.
Yeah. So it never makes sense to me to scrap something that still is in working condition. It kind of runs counter to how I think about everything in life. So, there's someone out there that could use it, and it's just a matter of can we cost effectively get it to them, be it sub-Saharan Africa, be it Central America, be it another part of the U.S. So.
For the big truck, we are working with
Yeah.
ARB on the reuse programs.
Mhm.
So we are, try to work on, with other districts to establish a reuse program.
Sure, and
From
that
2007 to 9.
yeah, that pilot with Puget Sound, I'm very impressed with, and so.
And there is a provision under the guidelines for EFMP that when they scrap the vehicle, that funding, if it's above what the company, the work that they have to do to scrap the vehicle, if there's a surplus, and that goes back into the program. So it's not as if we're leaving money on the table.
Sure, absolutely.
But we'll look into that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments on this? Any public comment on this? Any public comment there? Seeing none,
I'll move that in.
Thank you.
Recommended actions.
and I think he'll just, Supervisor, you so seconding it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, second. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And could we have a roll call?
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Supervisor Rutherford?
Aye.
Supervisor Solis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell?
Aye.
Motion passes 4 ayes.
Okay, we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, amend contract award for mobile source emission reduction projects. And we have a presentation from Vicki White. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Excuse me, Judy, before the presentation,
Yes,
I need to note that I'm recusing myself from item number 3 because of a campaign contribution from Bogue Engineering within the past 12 months.
thank you. All right, go ahead, Vicki.
Thank you. This action item is to amend contract awards that have already been approved by the board for mobile source emission reduction projects. In November of last year, the board approved contract awards for projects evaluated under the Carl Moyer program, guidelines to be funded by AB 134, which is now known as the Community Air Protection Program. As recently as April of this year, CARB approved a supplement to the Carl Moyer program guidelines with the intent to facilitate funding for these early action projects in disadvantaged and low-income communities. The guidelines supplement maintains the statutory requirements of the Carl Moyer program. However, it expands certain options such as project eligibility. And one of the main things it did, it offered higher grant amounts to qualifying projects through the AB 134 Community Air Protection Program. With approval from CARB staff, our staff applied the guidelines supplement to the AB 134 board approved projects to see what impact that would have. And we found that several of these projects located in disadvantaged and low-income communities qualify for the higher grant amounts. Not all of the projects qualify. For example, some of the restrictions are for on-road project category. Only those projects that will deploy zero-emission vehicles are eligible for the higher grant amounts. And in the off-road and marine category, only if the project continues to fall below the cost-effectiveness limit is it eligible for any additional funds. So this proposal is, we've applied the CARB's guidelines supplement, and we've received approval from CARB that we've done it correctly. So what we found was a total of 264 engines that were previously approved by the board now qualify for additional grant funds through the Community Air Protection Program. And these are only projects that are located in disadvantaged and low-income communities. So what we need to do is we propose to amend the contract awards under the AB 134 program to provide additional funds up to $4.6 million to these projects. This supplemental funding will bring the total awards for these projects to approximately $42.2 million. So this recommended action is to amend those contract awards under our Community Air Protection Program by adding up to $4.6 million for a total award of $42.2 million from the Community Air Protection AB 134 fund. With that, I have a couple minor administrative edits I need to mention to you guys. I need to call your attention, one of the original applicants called Sanmar Construction Inc. has indicated that it will not be accepting the additional award and that it would like to be removed from consideration. So as a result, its contract will not be amended, and the recommended action for this item will be revised as follows. It'll say amend contract awards under the Community Air Protection Program as identified in the attached table, adding up to $4.5 million for a total award of $42 million from the Community Air Protection Program. This is a decrease of $133,163 for the removal of this one project. And in addition to that, staff made a minor administrative edit involving a name change from the Long Beach Police Department to the City of Long Beach, which was requested by our Finance Department. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from committee members?
Was there any, was there anything, any reason why the Sandmore construction didn't accept it? That, were there some changes in
Yeah.
Is that what caused it, or is it something
Yeah,
more business related?
they actually had a management change, and then, for the original board approval, there's been a management change since then, and then when we approached the new manager, they were very kind of suspicious that we were, calling them. They knew nothing about the application, and despite our explaining to them that their company had applied, and we talked to a ranking official within that company, and they just said, well, we're not interested in moving forward. We don't have the financial support. And this was even calling them back to give them additional funding because they were located in a disadvantaged or low-income community. And we tried really hard to the point where they kind of said, back off. Don't call us anymore. So we tried, and we're hoping we'll probably reach out to them again for next year's Moyer program to see if they can, learn more about the program. They were very suspicious because of the change in management. There wasn't any passing along of information.
Yep. All right.
We tried.
Or the government were here to help and they were suspicious of that.
I'm here to help.
We'll reach out to them again a little later.
Right,
Thank you.
thank you. So any public comment on the item? Please come forward and give us your name. You can come here to this seat at the table.
Hello, my name is Drew Delaney, and I'm with Associates Environmental. Associates Environmental represents 18 of the companies named on the list as eligible for the additional funding awards and for the Community Air Protection Program. Many of them asked me to come here today and express their appreciation of consideration. The communities that will benefit from the emission reductions from these projects will benefit where the companies are, and oftentimes the employees that reside around those businesses. We look forward to continuing to work with our clients and the SCAQMD staff to achieve dramatic additional surplus NOx and PM reductions through the projects which are currently under review for the Voluntary Incentive Program and the Carl Moyer Program. To aid Associates Environmental's ongoing quest to bring our clients and the AQMD together with the best emission reducing funding projects. In regard to this item, I have one question. The companies and projects benefiting from the additional funding awards of this item were among those that submitted applications to the Carl Moyer Program in July of 2017, prior to passage of AB 134 and the supplement to the Carl Moyer guidelines that made the funding increase possible, proposed in this item possible. Can the staff describe the method by which companies and projects submitted to the Carl Moyer Program this June, how they're selected to receive Community Air Protection Program funds versus traditional Carl Moyer Program funds?
Okay, so, the intent of AB 134 is to seek these reductions immediately. So that's why we wanted to look at our list that was submitted last year. And those projects, we were beginning the contract process, so we thought they were good, suitable candidates for that funding. So we went ahead and submitted the project list to CARB as well as all the other air districts. And we got that list approved, so that's benefiting the ones that were submitted in 2017. So this year's Moyer program, we will have some additional AB 134 funds. And the projects will first be prioritized based on whether or not they're located in a disadvantaged or low-income community. And then after that, if we're still oversubscribed, we will look at a ranking based on cost effectiveness.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from public? Any public comments from your location, Supervisor?
None. None.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on
I'll
this.
move the recommended actions.
Second.
And maybe we have a roll call.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Supervisor Solis?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Aye.
motion passes 3 ayes.
Okay. So, is there any other business to come before this committee? No. Is there any public comment on the item that was not on our agenda? Seeing none, we will adjourn this meeting until Friday, September 21. So we will see you in 2 months, another month, 2 months, 1.5 months.